Alright YouTube, so if I seem a bit more slower than my regular videos, keep in mind I'm pulling an all-nighter. I quit my job. That's a story that will be discussed in the live shows. And there's a reason why. I don't want to spoil anything. I'm just going to put there were some insinuations made about me that were untrue by the management, so I had to quit, and I'm currently looking for another job. In fact, I've been filing applications like crazy within the past hour. But anyways, I wanted to talk about this debate, this tired old line, this little counter debate, and it really speaks true to the shit-flinging contest that is the two-party system in the United States of America. What am I talking about? Well, after a while, you'll see this line thrown out by a Republican. They'll say, well, Republicans never owned slaves. Republicans won the South. And this one always makes me laugh because these Republicans in the South sometimes also carry Confederate flags and act like that's also a patriotic symbol. Well, it's funny in two ways. I mean, for one, they conflate patriotism with a flag, not the Confederate flag, but the battle flag, with they conflate that flag with patriotism of a country that flag was part of a short-lived country or rebellion group, whatever you want to say, that was trying to secede from the country they have patriotism for. And it's also funny because the party that would stereotypically be ascribed to a Southerner is the party that, well, basically was at the seat of the Civil War on the Union side. But here's the thing. Anyways, you'll also hear, well, Democrats were the original racist party. They wanted slavery. They don't want blacks to have, they didn't want blacks to have equal rights. They were assholes. And here's the thing. The problems with this statement, for one, people who throw this argument out in the first place are either completely lacking knowledge in the history of this, B, being completely disingenuous, or C, being completely deceitful, usually the first and the third. The first and the third being the two main cases. What happened? And they want to say the Democrats were the original party of racism. Disclaimer, I'm a libertarian, so this two-party shit doesn't really apply to me. The problem with the statement is, first and foremost, they lack and lose history in this whole argument. They just, face value, say Democrats were racist. Well, back then everybody was basically racist towards blacks and Chinese, and it wasn't really, I don't know if it was racism as much as the fear competition, you know. If these people get freed, more jobs will have to compete for more jobs, you know. I'm sure there were some out-and-out racist people either way, but they seem to completely forget that there was a such thing as a Northern Democrat and a Southern Democrat. Now, a Southern Democrat is what they like to call the racist Democrats, you know, the ones that were wanting slavery to not end, even though either way it would have probably ended, and if it not naturally ended, I'm sure that there would have been something along the lines of a Haitian civil war, where they would basically be forced to kind of forfeit the practice of slavery. Because in some of these places in the South at the time, and still rings true, up to 50% of the population of some states or some areas were completely, well, were black. Now in Charleston, I just went to Charleston, I went to a wharf. A reconstructed wharf because, you know, Charleston's been basically bombed into the ground a couple times over the course of its history. But they reconstructed a wharf in the exact area and where it would have been. And if you don't know what a wharf is, it's basically just a place that they would ship the slaves to and put them on the dock, and then they put them in the wharf, and then they would auction them off from the wharf. But they reconstructed one and they put a museum inside of it. This is part of the Fort Sumter tour. If you are a history fan and you happen to find yourself in Charleston, please go check that out. It is amazing. In fact, you know, I have a few photos of me standing by old artillery that was used, and you know, I was walking around some of the original walls. They kind of preserved an original chunk of it. But this was pertinent. I just kind of went into a different tangent there, because in a certain portion of Charleston, I think at one point the entire city of Charleston, 70% of the population was of West African descent, so slaves. And it's really interesting. They have kind of a rich culture there. The African Americans there, you know, they still keep traditional practices such as weaving sawgrass baskets. I think I bought one off of a little boy in Charleston last year just as kind of a souvenir. And, you know, just throw some money at a hard-working kid, you know. But anyways, there were Southern Democrats, Northern Democrats, and, you know, I went to that whole tangent about slavery anyway. And this was, you know, you wouldn't just be described as a Democrat in this time period. It would either be John Doe, the Northern Democrat, or, I don't know, Bruce Gold, the Southern Democrat. They were described as almost, you know, they were the same party in a sense, but they kind of cut the ties at the name. You know, they had different interests in mind. Now, there was a thing called the Dixiecrats. They were a very short-lived, I believe only 1 year, maybe only less than a year, group that were a branch off of the Democrats. They were openly segregationist. And this would lead to the Southern strategy in the Birmingham years. The Birmingham years are relevant and pertinent to this, because this is when these so-called Southern despicable Democrats, or just these racist Democrats, as the Republicans who like to use this talking point would often describe them as, this is when they would start moving to and fleeing to the Republican Party. I believe 1964 was like the first case of a major politician switching parties from being a Southern Democrat to a Republican. So in a way, you know, they also neglect that, the whole ideological flip that happened about a half century ago. So basically, well, let's go even further back, maybe before the 40s. What was considered your standard Republican Party back then would have been more in line with the views of the Democratic Party we have present day. Not present day, but maybe the past few decades. And what we would expect out of your standard Democrat back then would be more similar to varying levels depending on Southern or Northern Democrat. Would be more so your standard Republican of today, or past few decades. Now, why I'm saying past few decades is the libertarian in me is kind of coming out and saying, my personal belief is in these past few election cycles is that both of these parties seem to just are becoming more and more obviously one collective statist outfit, I guess you could say. But that's just my opinion on it. You can have your gripes with that all you want. But it's amazing to me that these people will continuously throw out this counter debate, time after time after time, and consistently be told and have it consistently rebutted and say, hey, you're forgetting the ideological flip. And they say, I don't care about no goddamn ideological flip. They're so fucking racist with this white privilege shit. And it's like, oh, I haven't really heard a mainstream Democrat talk about white privilege yet. Besides maybe Bernie Sanders, but even before that, he was an independent, so that really wouldn't matter. I mean, you can make a case that Hillary might start throwing these talking points out to start pandering to certain groups of people. I think we know who those groups of people are. That I think it's obvious who those groups of people would be. But the thing is that they continuously just kind of ignore and keep going after this argument that it's almost as if they want it to be true so bad, but they neglect about a half century worth of history. In fact, they probably neglect about 100 years worth of history. So yeah, you can try that argument all you want, but anymore people are just going to correct you, and if you continue to do it, people are going to say you're a fucking moron. So that's about it, YouTube. Peace out.